just seen how, I used to look at the old.
All right, we're going to get started. Compliance with the Open Public Meetings Law. I wish to state that on May the 9th, 2014, the notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was posted on the official Township Bulletin Board, mailed to the Cape May County Gazette, the Atlantic City Press, the Ocean City Sentinel Ledger, the Herald Times, and filed with the Township Clerk. We hereby direct that these be made a part of the minutes of the meeting. I also would like to say that tonight's meeting is being video recorded, and it will be available to be able to be viewed on UTTV Channel 97 on the Upper Township website. So I'd ask all to rise for the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Barbara, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Moore? Here. Mr. Coggins? Here. Mr. Sarah? Here. Mr. Young?
Here.
Mayor Plumbo?
Here.
All members are present.
Okay. So would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the regular meeting and the closed session minutes from April 28th, 2014?
Move to approve. Second.
Is there any corrections, omissions, deletions that anyone's aware of? Okay, hearing none. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Barbara, do you have anything for us this evening?
No, I have nothing to report this evening, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Daniel?
Yes. Last meeting, Township Committee asked me to research whether or not they have the authority to adopt an ordinance limiting the number of terms that a member of the committee can serve. First, I want to point out that I did do the research, but first I want to point out that the issue is whether this area has been preempted by state regulation. It's not a constitutional issue that was reported recently as a constitutional issue. It's really not. It's a question of whether or not the state statutory and regulatory scheme is so comprehensive in this area that it precludes municipal regulation. There's numerous state statutes that define and set forth the type of municipal government. We run under a township form of government. There's boroughs, there's cities, there's towns. And more than half of the New Jersey municipalities operate under the Optional Municipal Charter Act, which is commonly known as the Faulkner Act. Those statutes are very detailed in terms of the terms of office for the municipal governing body and the mayors, if there are mayors there, how they're elected, their qualifications. After that was adopted, that optional Municipal Charter Act, there was a lawsuit brought by Bayonne where they attempted to institute term limits. All right, and I'm going to quote from that case. It was in the Superior Court. It says, "By enactment of the Faulkner Act, it is clear that the legislature intended to preempt the regulation of municipal elections, including the number of terms that an elected official is eligible to hold. The provisions of this act dealing with elections are so comprehensive that they preclude the possibility of the coexistence of municipal regulations. Further, the proposed ordinance would conflict with state law and policy since it would prohibit that which is permitted by statute. The legislature has expressly fixed the term of municipal elected officials at 4 years. That was the form of government they were under. It has not limited the eligibility of a person to be a candidate because of his previous terms in office. Moreover, the establishment of the term of office for municipal elected officials is within the power of the legislature. Therefore, a municipality has no power to alter the term of office without an express statutory grant of power." It's pretty clear that it's been settled for some time that this area of the law goes to the legislature, not to municipal regulation. So it's my opinion that you don't have the authority to limit the terms, that it would be a state legislative requirement. And the state legislature then would have to consider each form of government and pass a statute that says, okay, municipalities are allowed to limit the terms, or they themselves would limit the terms. But again, it's my opinion, based on case law, that you don't have the authority to adopt such an ordinance.
Okay. Thank you.
And I do have, let's see, a personnel item, 3 contract negotiation items, and litigation items for tax appeals. for closed session.
All right. Paul?
Thank you. I just want to report on the paving project. The contractor has started up in earnest paving last week. They finished just about a third to a half of the paving work to date, and barring any stormy weather this week, they should be close to having it finished this week.
They've done a good job. I mean, I'm not an engineer, and obviously, but it appears like they've done a great job, and there's certainly a multitude of skateboarders out there now that they have these fresh coats of asphalt to rollerblade things on. But I wanted to also move in a different direction. Well, first of all, if anybody has any questions on the road repairs and the pavement, because I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in Strathmere at that north end. And I was wondering if you could give us an update on that. I walked down there yesterday. I was in Strathmere at the beach. Walked down there, took a look at it, and it really looks like a real problem, obviously. I mean,
Yes.
there's a big drop off. I realize there's a bulkhead that's in front of the house, and we have rock growing in front of the bulkhead, but really is a dangerous situation. And I know we put some signs up and things to warn people, but...
And we're just going to, we'll continue to monitor the situation. We've actually been taking a look at it over the last 3 months now, as the erosion has kind of progressed towards landward, and at this point the rocks are exposed for probably about 30 feet in length, but at this point, without them being totally exposed, I don't think that we're at that point, especially considering how close we are to summer, and the tides and the winds turning around and being more favorable to us. So barring another large storm, I think we're in pretty good shape. I'm going to be continuing to work with Public Works in evaluating where the tide limit is. We had thought about putting up some fencing along that, the eroded dune edge, but as long as the high tide line is in close proximity to that, any fencing we put up there really does not have a chance to staying up there. So, we'll continue to make sure the signage is up and posted, and keep that one beach access path closed for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, because, I mean, the concern is obviously, when you're a younger person, you're more of a daredevil, and you want to walk, and you explore, and you go up on those, rock ruins. And the last thing I want for someone to get their ankle caught in there or something like that. I mean, we need to make sure, I'm going to alert the lifeguards to make sure they do whatever they can to try and make sure people aren't on those rock ruins. It's further out of, where they actually patrol, but I'm going to make it a point for them to keep an eye on that. I guess what I'm also going to ask, though, is that we come up with some contingency plan. I mean, we realize it's the summer, we realize that we're not getting nor'easters, but that also means that who knows if there's a potential for a tropical storm or a hurricane where that could really be exacerbated, that problem there. So I would at least like to have something, not that I'm looking to do anything at this point, but let's have some plan in place as to how we'll react if something like that were to happen, say in August or whatever, before the beach replenishment gets started.
Back in the early part of March, end of February, in anticipation of that, I've already made contact with the contractor that did our last 2 emergency beach fills, where they trucked sand out on the beach, and kind of gotten a preliminary price quote from them, and talked about timing and how that project would work out and what coordination would happen to be. So I feel that we're in pretty good shape to be able to react fairly quickly if an emergency would arise.
Okay. That's all I have, sir.
That's all I had, thank you.
Barbara?
Nothing this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Mr. Coggins?
Actually, a couple of items of good news. We received notice that the township is receiving a grant in the amount of $172,000 from the New Jersey DOT for the completion of the paving of Bay Avenue and Strathmere.
Just for a point, it won't be for the completion, it'll be for the continuation.
A continuation. Thank you.
That project would extend for several phases, but with those 2 phases, that would be able to help us address some of the more critical areas that we have drainage issues on Bayview Drive.
Yeah, when I received a call from the governor's office on this last week, It sounded like there was another step that had to take place, but, we did receive the letter verifying it, so I assume that we're good to go with this. Is that what everybody else's understanding is on this?
There may be some final paperwork that we have to sign and transmit back and
Okay.
forth with the state, but it's pretty standard stuff that we have to do.
Okay. Sorry, John.
Second, I'd like to recognize Mr. Dietrich and Ms. Spiegel for identifying an opportunity for the township to realize some cost avoidance in our utility expenses. They did some research based on the discussions that we had in getting involved in the energy consortium, and the outcome of that was they realized that had we not been involved in the energy consortium in prior years, we actually would have realized a savings. So based on their recommendation, we are not going to get involved in the energy consortium going forward. We seem to be in a falling energy market right now, at least for natural gas. So it seems like a pretty good opportunity to avoid some expense there.
Great. Anything else?
Nope, that was it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Young?
Okay, we had the bike-a-thon, we took a tour to Tuckahoe last weekend. I understand it's close to a couple hundred bikes that were out there. It seemed to be a really big success. We also had a football game out there at the same time, and soccer going on, so there's people walking from field to field, watching and milling around and buying at the refreshment stand. So it was kind of nice, and we received a lot of compliments, and a lot of people wanting us to try to put programs together out there where we would have more going on at the same time. It makes a better day out of it, My meeting with baseball, Paul, about the batting cages. So I'm going to meet with Frank and get out there and see what we can do. I guess there was a problem with poles and they're being reversed or something. We'll have to try to find some kind of a fix for that so they can get them up and operating. I spoke to Dwayne, spoke to Roy a little bit the other day about moving forward with Amanda's Field and with the baseball items. Roy's working on schedule as far as manpower and how things will work out in the future with that program, trying to designate maybe one crew that will be there almost every day so that we don't have too many hands in the soup again the way it's been in the past. One thing we do have, baseball, just to make everybody aware, we're part of Little League Baseball, and one of their requirements this year for insurance was an increase in the medical coverage, liability, medical payment limits. We were $25,000 per incident, and it's mandatory, we have to go to $100,000 per incident. So I'm not sure what the difference is in the numbers.
Has that been conveyed to a risk management consultant?
It actually came from
Came from him?
Yeah.
the,
So it's something we're going to have
We're going to have to amend the policy then.
Yeah. So just, we're aware of that coming up. I do have a letter here from Barry Keefe. Barry appeared before the Recreation Advisory Board last month for us to allow pickleball, which is a new upcoming sport for the senior citizens. They're presently playing it at the Tuckahoe tennis courts on Friday mornings. They're looking to do something at the community center for the winter months so that they can continue possibly every Friday morning with 2 or 3 courts. And I have a list of who would be in charge of it. It'll be very similar to men's basketball, where we'll have possibly 4 to 5 people that are going to be approved to open and shut and to run the program in case Barry can't be there.
So it won't be an ongoing program, it'll be a township-sponsored program with volunteers that are sanctioned? So we're not going to create an organization?
Right now, no organization. It was my understanding from the meeting. I think it's a good thing for us if we can do it, to have it down there.
As I understand the difference with the adult basketball league, that was a township-run program where we allowed certain volunteers to run it for us, as opposed to an outside organization that we provide our facility for that runs it themselves.
Yeah, and that's what I'm looking for. I think it's a good program for the seniors. There's presently leagues in Avalon, I think Stone Harbor, Ocean City, and we're also looking at possibly taking the old hockey rink at Commonwealth Park. Since we have that surface out there, it's a hard surface for the summer, we can fit 2 to 3 courts there. And it's basically just about lines. I think each court was roughly 22 by 40 feet. And it's like a cross between handball, paddleball, and they use an oversized paddle with a hard plastic ball. And it's, like I said, it seems to become, I've been doing some research on it, and it's really not becoming sport for the senior citizens. It's a low-impact sport. So if the township committee would like, I would like to make it a sanctioned sport. And we'll have all the, the list of names. The question comes in then, they will require some small amount of equipment such as portable nets and those issues. So I'll look into that and see what the actual cost will be and bring it back to the next meeting.
Well, from my opinion, we've always tried to include sports and activities for all ages. I mean, part of the planning of Amanda's Field allowed for the bike path, the walking path, that a lot of people, no matter what age, utilize. And if we can certainly provide that at a reasonable cost, I think that would be an asset and a continuation of what we offer from a recreational standpoint. I'm not sure what the age limit is, but I bet you and I are probably eligible to be a member. Tony, you too. So we all potentially could be out there. Maybe we'll have an Upper Township Committee team or
A
something.
lot of the people that are playing are people that have grown up in our men's basketball program. They hit an age where they can't go out and play basketball now. So they really adopted this and going full force with it. So, if the board would like, we're trying to get the numbers together on what they need and come up with some prices and go forward with it. My hopes are that maybe we get a group like this in there, and it's basically all seniors, that possibly we can have them also take it one step further, maybe have a dance once in a while, things like that for community center. I saw they had the big band dance the other night, and that seemed to be really well attended. There's a lot of cars out there, so. 4th of July, we're moving forward with that. We had the 2 bands locked in. I had the sound person locked in. Barb and I had to meet tomorrow and talk about liability issues. I'm looking at, again, Priscilla Yang possibly pony rides for the kids. Talk to Frank Conrad about possibly having some of the bouncy things for the kids with blow-ups. That's something that has to go through JIF and be approved through them. I don't know, Barb, if you've got any more information on that or not since the other day. But, I had another vendor that has a cupcake shop, a cookie shop, and she wants to set up a table and do those kinds of things. I did have one situation where travel soccer, the European under-14s, thought that they were going to have the refreshment stand this year because lacrosse was supposed to have it last year. Nobody opened it last year that I know of. And we had already organized this, that all sports are going to be involved operating this. And any money we generate will go to the Challenger Sports Program as a donation from the township sports organizations. So I would talk to...
No one was in touch with me about that.
Was that?
I'm not aware that they were of the
I talked
understanding.
to Dawn the other day about it, explained to her what we're doing, and she was fine with that. So I think it's a great chance for us to bring all the sports organizations together in one entity for this fundraiser and for the 4th of July fireworks. So right now we're scheduled for 4:30 to 8:30 with music, and figuring fireworks will be right around 9 o'clock. I talked to Jay Newman, and I'll talk to the other fire companies about helping with the security, and just walking around and just trying to make sure we maintain things the way they're supposed to be. Other than that, that's all I have.
Before we move on, you're going to bring back the pickleball proposal for a next meeting with numbers, and that's when you're going to want to vote from the township committee?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I think. I think we should have the numbers first.
Okay.
Okay? That's it.
Okay. Mr. Ansara.
Thank you. Last week, we had a supervised meeting for the wards, and I think it went pretty well. It was regarding the needs of the township, as well as that about recreation. Talking to Roy, Wayne, Mike Jones, Tom Wally, especially recreation, seems to be that oftentimes the taxes I've done twice. The first time it's not right, do it again. So I told, I got Wayne together, and the rest of the supervisors to go set the course. Don't ask questions, I've done it before, how to do it, when to do it, move on with it. But it seems if we build something now, as the sports authority wanted, and that's not right. They have to be built. It's time to money to school. So they have to be done. We told them what they get. They're not going to tell us what they want. These guys know what they're doing, how to do it, and they will do it.
There's been too many hands.
Yes. Now we're either going to raise the fuel, we're all we want to make it do the work. You know, concrete pads and pour in the wrong places. That's not the wrong thing.
And I'm sorry, I missed the supervisor's meeting, but I couldn't get out of work.
Yeah, we spoke to them to do what they know the best, they will do the job. But not interference with anybody with the sports facilities.
But we talked about it, Dwayne and I walked it, Chris and I walked it. I'm going to walk it with Paul as far as, where the concrete's in the wrong places. Some of it we might be able to work around that, some of it's going to have to be tore out.
That's just like enough of that, these people with the recreation telling us what they want, how it's going to be. They don't know what they want, how it's going to be done. They know, they want to do it.
By recreation, you mean the private program?
Yes.
Yeah.
My children will be available till probably the end of June. He's going to be on the recreation side of it, he agreed, he has no problem with that. As well as Tom Wally, the one will be here. We have probably 7 people staying every day, right, Roy? In addition to Mike and everything else, so.
And seven doesn't.
Well, you have had 6, sometimes 7, so let's get these done once for all, the right way.
I appreciate it.
Roy is here, we will do what he can. We're going to let the news of the township, so we're coming here, recreation.
Yeah. And that's the key to expedite the process of what we're doing.
Yes.
We can't be training people.
There has been too many people on the outside telling us what to do, how to do it. It's been wrong every time we do this, absolutely. It's done, we're done with that. They know how to do it, they're not before, and they'll do it the right way.
Paul and I talked about that a week or two ago, that, we'd like to have the organization donate money and help out like baseball did. Unfortunately, a lot of the work that was done was not done correctly, and
Yes.
it comes down to
It's
the
going to cost a
township.
lot of money, it's going to cost a lot of money, the baseball field, the local, the other one. Right.
Absolutely, I appreciate it.
Other than that, question is out, let's move along, we'll get better. The other truck gets here, we do better, we'll have more help available. That's about all I have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Barr?
Well, the mayor and I had the opportunity to meet with Dennis Township officials in reference to our shared service agreement with the courts. That will be subject to our closed session. We'll go over the nitty-gritty with the rest of the committee. Very positive meeting that we had with them. And also, we're still putting down the plans for the fireworks. And from what I'm hearing from Hobie tonight, looks like we're going to have to join teams here, Hobie, and go over the entire day and see what we're going to have to do as far as public safety is concerned out there. So we're going to set up a meeting, the chief rescue squad, and the other fire chiefs, and hopefully we'll have a nice event out there this year. Other than that, that's why I report. So
And just to-
Feedback's been phenomenal.
Just to add what Ed was talking about, we had the meeting, and I'm not going to go into details because we're still ironing things out, but the meeting was specifically about the renewal of the contract for shared services for the court. But on top of that, we had an opportunity to talk about some other opportunities in shared services, and I do foresee a good opportunity over the next 6 months to share some more significant opportunities with Dennis Township. We talked a little bit about construction, we talked a little bit about a lot of things, sharing of equipment and those kind of things. I didn't want to get into too much detail without bringing in our expertise, public works and those kind of things, but I do think that there's a real good opportunity for both towns to work together in an effort to save money for both towns. So that was a very good meeting that we had. Okay, go ahead.
Just want to thank Roy for today. Most people know we've had an ongoing problem in Tuckahoe road fields with the cars parked down the street. I had a phone call yesterday from one of the neighbors in a conversation with the other ones. They couldn't even drive their own vehicles down the street, the amount of cars that were down there. So I asked Ward today to send somebody down and to post that whole side, temporary no parking, until we get the ordinance adopted and get the permanent signs down there. They were parking in driveways,
That's on the
blocking driveways, getting cussed at and screamed at, so it's, you know, I thought we better take care of it right now, so we did, and I'm gonna thank Ward for getting somebody down there to handle it.
And we're in the process of going through an ordinance.
Right.
It's on the agenda tonight.
So that was it.
Okay. And Roy, one more chance for a little bit of a kudos. Today, I had an interesting call from several of the news stations. Someone, I guess with a practical joke, decided to change the digital sign on Route 49 to a different name of the town. I won't go into details of that, but let's just say it wasn't really an appropriate name. And I wasn't so sure it was that newsworthy, except for that as I was driving down to meet them, I really began to think a little bit about it, figuring that it could be a potential public safety problem if they had, put something on the sign that was inappropriate and directed people on Route 49 to go to a wrong make a left and it was a dead end, or say the road was closed, or really had used more explicit language than what they did. And in fact, since we're talking about it, was ASSville was what they put on their next left. And so, that may not be offensive to some people or whatever, but the fact is that what concerned me more is that it was very easy to have access to the box, and in fact, the box you could open and there was a code inside on what to do. So, we could have changed it today. And so, I think, the moral, or I guess the story here is that we need to be sure that when we have these digital signs in the township, that they've taken the proper security measures to ensure that the signs won't be changed by anyone who wants to have a practical joke or do something more offensive to people. I know that we own a digital sign that we utilize, and we have changed the access code to that purposely so that people can't go in, because, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, those signs have a standard access code that if you've worked with the signs, well, you work with one, you can do pretty much any of them unless they've changed the access code, correct?
That's correct.
And, I don't really think, I think it was probably an isolated incident. I think somebody was trying to, have some fun, per se, quote unquote. But, when you begin to think about it, there really could be some definite ramifications from it that could be detrimental to public safety. So, and also could be offensive to our residents. So, I think as we see these signs being put up in the township by the various construction groups, especially since we're doing some paving projects, and I know the state has given us assurance that they're going to also monitor it and make sure that it doesn't happen, that we too do the same thing in the future. So that's enough on that. Let's move on, please, Barbara, if you would. The first resolution, we're going to just kind of move quickly, and then we'll do our regular routine, because tonight's a very special night. The one thing I want to do before I read the resolution is have us vote on it. So I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with the resolution honoring Alice Teal for her years of service to the township.
Second?
Is there any discussion? Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Now, I have to say tonight is a very unique evening. There have been two people over the years that have spent a lot of time in the township meetings. One was Elizabeth Burgess, who has honored, and there's a plaque for the amount of years that she spent coming to the township meetings on a regular basis, certainly all the years that I've been on the township committee until she was no longer with us. And Alice Teal is another one. Alice has been coming to these meetings for over 30 years. So she's gone through the old township hall. She has gone through now 20 years at this township hall, and has been a regular attendee when we didn't have any other attendees other than Alice Teal. And Alice has decided that it's time for her to kind of move on a little bit and move into, I don't want to say retirement, because I don't think that's what you're going to do, but certainly move into a different area. And tonight, I'm going to read a resolution, and we're going to walk down and we're going to honor her with her own plaque, because I think very few times would you ever have anyone that has been in attendance for such a long period of time, that has contributed to this township in both its culture and its history and its publications over the past 30 years that Alice has done. So let me read this resolution, and then I'm going to ask my fellow committeemen to go down so that we could recognize Alice at her normal seat that she's been sitting in, I'm sure, for the past 20 years, because I've been on the Township Committee for over 17 years now, and you've always sat in the first row in that seat as long as I can remember. So, here's the resolution. Whereas Alice Teal, a longtime writer, public relations professional, and resident of Upper Township, began her career in government in Upper Township in 1985, during which time she served as the Public Relations Director, the Public Information Officer, and editor of the Upper Township Bulletin, a position she held with integrity, professionalism, and dedication. During her tenure as Public Information Officer and editor of the Upper Township Bulletin, Alice attended numerous groundbreaking and ribbon-cutting ceremonies throughout the township. She worked tirelessly and effectively to benefit our citizens in construction of the Upper Township branch of the library, and she put a fast track on the construction of the Memorial Post Office. She received many letters and certificates of appreciation for her invaluable service and assistance to various organizations, including, but not limited to, the Upper Township Chamber of Commerce, the Boy Scouts of America, Pac 71 and 79, Star Lodge number 65, F&A&M, Upper Township All-Star Soccer Cheerleaders, and the Ortlieb Civic Association. Whereas Alice continues to serve her community as an active member of the Society of the Mayflower Descendants, as editor of the Mayflower Quarterly magazine and author of the Mayflower Quarterly Diamond Jubilee, a compilation of best of the Mayflower Quarterly articles between 1935 and 2010. Alice is also a member of the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution and is a foundation board member of the historic Cold Spring Village, demonstrating an exemplary measure of public spiritedness and earning the deepest respect and admiration of her fellow citizens. For nearly 30 years, Alice has been a faithful attendee at the Upper Township Committee meetings, and it is appropriate that she be publicly honored for her dedication to Upper Township and recognized for her achievements. Now therefore be it resolved by the governing body of the Township of Upper to honor and extend to Alice Teal our heartfelt thanks and gratitude for a generous donation of time, commitment, leadership, and public service to this community, and we wish her well in her future endeavors. So this is dated May 12th, today, signed by all the Township Committee members as well as Barbara Young. And I'd like to go down and we can unveil a little plaque for Alice so that she will be engraved in memory in this Township Hall for as long as this Township Hall is in existence to be serving the Township residents. Oh, we give you guys one. We're going to give you some flowers, Alice. We want to honor you. The Township Committee's here. And we have you videotaped. That's a big change. When you first came here, I would think that we were using old-fashioned typewriters or something in those days and writing a lot.
Obsolete now.
Everything's obsolete now. It won't be long before they'll figure out something new. But anyway, I'm sure you have seen so many changes in the township. I often say if walls could talk, it's amazing some of the things they'd say. You have been involved with the Township Committee for over 30 years, and certainly remember those that have served in the past, and have a good, rich history of what Upper Township is about. So here's the resolution, and I'll ask one of my colleagues if they wouldn't mind unveiling the plaque. Everybody come on over here, and the plaque reads, in honor of our dear friend Alice Teal, for many years of generous commitment to the public service and stated May 2014. So there are just two plaques in the township. One is dedicated to Elizabeth Burgess and one to you, Alice. So congratulations and thank you. You're welcome to say a few words, if you have any words.
Well, I've been living practically alone for about 40 years, and it seemed like there was a time for me when I had no family to make those decisions to move on. But I'm going to be a working resident to go at the Ashores, and I will continue to edit the Mayflower Quarterly, which is now in my 21st year.
Congratulations, and we wish you the best. And I won't say retirement, because I know you're not ready to ever retire.
People ask me if I've retired, and I say no, just retired-ification.
Well, very good. We can all live with you as long. Barbara, if you would, let's move on with the resolutions.
Okay. Item number 2, accepting the bid and authorizing the execution of a contract with Robert Hoover and Sons of Flanders, New Jersey for the furnishing and delivery of one 10-foot bed dump truck in the amount of $149,949.
Move to approve.
Second?
Okay? This
Are you satisfied with this?
Yes.
memorializes discussion that we had at some prior meetings. So would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr? Yes. Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 3, establishing a local emergency planning committee.
And I'll second for discussion. And those that are listed on the emergency planning committee, and this is something that's required, are Scott Morgan will be the chair, who is our deputy of OEM. I'll serve as a member. Mr. Sarah will serve as a member. Paul Dietrich, our engineer. Jay Potter, our chief of the rescue squad. Lou Ranizewski, who is the deputy chief at Seaville. Jay Newman, chief of the Marmora Fire Company. Richard Stevens, who is the chief at Seaville. Bruce Riordan, who is the chief of Strathmere Fire Company, and Ed Carter, who is the chief of Pawtucket Fire Company. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 4, authorizing the mayor and township clerk to submit a renewal application for a commercial renter's license to the Legalized Games of Chance Control Commission. And this is for our bingo, to authorize us to open.
And this affords the opportunity for charitable organizations to hold bingo at the community center. We were the first municipality to have approval for this, so, last year. So would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 5, designating a certain Strathmere beach areas in the township of Upper as a surfing beach and a catamaran sailboat beach for the 2014 summer season.
And these are the same streets that have been identified in the past, Vincent Avenue to Sherman for the surfing beach, and all the way down towards the south, Nelson for the catamaran beach. So,
I know there used to be some complaints years back, and then it's been resolved.
you know what, there really hasn't been any catamarans on the beach that I'm aware of being stored in a number of years. The surfing beach has always been at Vincent and Strathmere, and they usually have guards that are experienced in surfing, and they kind of monitor so that there's no, folks running into one another and those kind of things. So it's a good part of the activity, and we're glad to be able to afford it to those that are taking advantage of the beach for other things, recreational. So, we need a motion. I'll make a motion.
Second.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 6, releasing the performance surety bond of Mashura Burger for the major subdivision on Block 453, lots 10 and 11.01.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Paul?
This is a major subdivision where the developer had improved the street, Ella Lane, off the Dennisville-Petersburg Road. The improvements have been in place for more than 2 years. Typically, when the developer asks for it, they put up a 2-year maintenance bond. They just held the performance bond in place. It was a cash surety bond, which was more than the maintenance bond was required. And all the improvements have been in place for that 2-year period, and now they've asked for that, their performance and their maintenance surety requirements to be released at this time.
Okay, no problems on your end, Dan?
No.
Okay, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
I would have to abstain, I have a business deal with Sure.
Okay.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried with 4 in favor, and Mr. Barr is abstaining. Item number 7, authorizing the computer director to prepare specifications and solicit bids for security upgrades to municipal buildings.
Move the resolution. Second.
Okay, again, this is something we had discussed in the past. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 8, cancel and refund taxes on exempt property for Block 24, Lot 44.
Okay,
Move the resolution.
Second.
and this is for disabled veteran, right?
Yes.
And
for the
so they're
current year.
eligible to not have to pay property taxes.
Yes.
So would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 9, cancel tax sale certificate and refund Block 503, Lot 17.
Is this the same thing?
No.
No, this is
This is a tax sale certificate that was sold a few years ago, but when the purchaser of the certificate did its title search, it was discovered that two of the lots are owned by the township, therefore the certificate's defective, and under the case law, they are entitled to a cancellation of that certificate and their money back, and that's the refund of $701.19.
Move the resolution. Second.
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 10, authorizing separate cash stored funds in the Upper Township Municipal Court.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 11, supporting Cape May County in the restoration project of the revetment wall along Ocean Drive, County Route number 619, between the Rush Chatton Bridge and the Corson's Inlet Bridge.
Move to approve.
Second, and Paul, what does it mean when we say that we're going to be supporting? We're just going to,
The county's just looking for support. They're making application in their final submission package to the DOT and the Federal Highway Administration for funding for that revetment project along Ocean Drive there, which everybody knows is a
Right.
very vulnerable spot, and they're just looking for a resolution of support of the project. So they take support.
they're not looking for
They're
us
not
to
looking for
assist in
financial
any
support.
type of, okay.
It's a request actually to the DOT that they get the municipality involved to
Right.
support the project.
Okay. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 12, appointing the 2014 season beach patrol personnel.
Move to approve.
Second.
And, hold on one second. All right, I'm going to need to recuse myself because I have a nephew and a niece on here that are part of the lifeguard, so.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Abstain.
Abstaining? Motion is carried with 4 in favor. Item number 13, appointing the 2014 season boat ramp attendants.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 14, appointing the public agency compliance officer.
What is this?
The public agency compliance officer is someone who would, who oversees the the contract advertisements and ensures that the affirmative action language is in the resolutions for all public contracts
Who will be the
and
officer?
things of that
Barb,
nature.
it's required annually by the Department of Community Affairs to appoint an officer. The clerk is being appointed.
Move to approve.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansara?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 15, authorizing the purchase of a vehicle from the 2013 capital improvement bond ordinance in the amount of $25,635.
Which one is this, Marshall? Is this the,
I'm sorry,
Beach Patrol.
this is the beach patrol truck.
vehicle.
they finally got what they,
Yeah, they got the specs that they needed, and I know they talked to Chief Potter about, making sure they had the, the right, whatever it is, for the lights and the sirens and all that kind of stuff, so.
Move the resolution. Second.
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansara?
yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 16, authorizing the mayor and township clerk to sign a revised contract with Emergency Communications Network for the Code Red Next Emergency Notification System service.
Before you act on this one, we did have a contract earlier in the year for this system, but our emergency management coordinator feels that, he called it the push time, the amount of time it takes to get the messages out under our existing contract was not adequate in the event we had a serious crisis and we needed to get the notifications out quickly. I'll defer to Barbara as the additional cost, but apparently it is in the budget, and he's requested this. It's a modification of the existing contract. Actually, it's a revised contract. And if you recall, we had talked about their liability issues. It's essentially the same type of situation where we assume much of that liability for the messages.
The cost is an additional $5,500 for the year, and it is budgeted.
And this gives us a much better response time. What used to be the reverse 911 is now code red, so that if we need to get information out to our residents for impending weather or any other kind of emergency situation, they'll get access to that information much quicker.
It speeds up the response time for the messages, and it also allows us more flexibility in sending out. Before, it was strictly for an emergency. Now, we'll be allowed to send emergencies, but also other notifications that have to do with the township. It's not any kind of solicitations at all. No solicitations, just information that needs to get to residents.
So public information that's sent out.
It could be both. You can get text from it. If you sign up for it, you also will get a telephone ring. The other thing is it's more specific to allowing for cell phones in it, and I think it condenses the area, the numbers, the area codes more geographically to our area. As you recall, sometimes we're getting crossover between Ocean City and Upper with some of the, at least reverse 911. This actually will allow us to have more of a handle on the specific calls, that serve the residents of Upper, so.
And it can be targeted just for one certain area in the township. If just one certain area needs a message, all the residents would not get it. It would target just certain areas.
So do we have a motion yet? Okay, I'll make the motion.
Second.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansara?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 17, appointment of J.P. Bainbridge and Associates and J. Paul Bainbridge as an appraiser for the Township of Upper.
Move the resolution.
Second.
And this memorializes the discussion, Dan, that we've had. in the
Yes,
past with it.
this is, he is already a authorized appraiser for the township, and this continues an existing contract.
Okay, let's call the roll, please.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansara?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 18, under ordinances, public hearing and final adoption of ordinance number 9, 2014, an ordinance amending revised general ordinance, Chapter 8 of the Code of Upper Township. This is the parking.
And this ordinance addresses basically what Mr. Young was talking about earlier. There was a request to prohibit some parking on certain sides of Old Tuckahoe Road for public safety measures, and the signs will have no parking signs there. So before I open it up to the public, if there's anyone that wants to address it, does anyone on the Township Committee have any further things? Dan, Paul, anybody?
Yeah. Do we have any signs down there that points them to the parking lots where they are now? The one floor lot, they don't want it. I mean, maybe we should have signs down there.
Nothing that specifies the locations.
Yeah, I think, it might be a good idea to put them down there.
Okay. Well, that can be worked out on how we implement this, but I guess if there isn't any comment based on the actual ordinance, I'll open up to the public to see if anyone would like to address the Township Committee on that. Hearing just a sneeze, God bless you.
Sorry.
We'll close the public portion and entertain a motion for adoption.
Motion to adopt?
Second.
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Nacera? Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Colombo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 19, under new business, the ALS Association Greater Philadelphia Chapter requests use of township roads for the ALS Express Bike Ride to be held on June 14th.
This is an annual event, correct?
Yes, it is.
Everything's in place, do the work, and all that stuff?
Yes.
Yeah, I think nothing's changed from last year, right, Paul?
No.
Move to approve the same portion.
All right, so we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Nacera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Colombo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 20, Calvary Baptist Church requests use of township roads for community walk, run, ride for relief fundraiser to be held on June 14th with a rain date of June 21st. And I might add that the two rides will not coincide with each other.
I was just going to ask that.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Nacera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 21, New Jersey Tar Heels request use of the Upper Township Community Center for an AAU girls basketball tournament to be held on June 21st and 22nd, 2014.
Well, I've got a couple questions on this one.
Okay?
Are these, I guess we're going to have a team in this from the township.
Excuse me?
In this tournament, we'll have kids from the township playing, I would imagine.
I would imagine.
What is the fees that we're charging them for the community center for the day?
The community center rates are based on per room, and it looks like they're using just the gym. I don't see the kitchen in here. So it would be at a rate of, I believe it's $50?
We'd have to check the
We'd have to
ordinance, it's
check the-
$50 or $100.
Either 50 or 100.
Yeah, I don't know if it's for the whole
No,
day.
It's per hour, I
Yeah.
believe.
Per
The
hour?
community center's got separate
Yes.
rates, it's in the ordinance, I'd have to look it
All
up.
right. I just want to make sure we're not getting into $50 for the day.
No, no, it's per
And
hour.
it may be higher than that, Hope.
Okay.
It's either $50 or $100 per hour.
And if we thought we needed employees there or there was extra cost, the ordinance allows for that charge as well.
Okay. That's one of my issues, with the tournaments coming in, especially outside tournaments. I think we should have a full-time employee there for the day, in case there's a problem or something has to be fixed or the lights go out, but they should be paying that salary for the day. So it's in there.
Well, it's in there, but I think that the clerk's office would need direction to talk to Public Works to get an employee there.
Okay.
And I don't know, I guess it's on a Saturday, or is it at night?
I mean, my point is,
It might be overtime.
if the bathroom backs up or clogs, I just think it behooves us to start having somebody there for tournaments.
It would have to be,
Overtime, there's provision in the ordinance to charge the user, and
if it's deemed that additional services or employees are needed, yes.
I had a question about the certificate of insurance.
Yes.
Did you notice the stamp that was across the face of it, fully
Yes.
licensed? Dan, what does?
It's the
Well,
same.
they have to get it approved by the risk management consultant. I actually didn't, because it looks like it's not the
It's just a
facsimile.
sample of
Yeah,
it.
they have to actually get the correct one, that's just the sample. They
So
would not
so
go out.
they have, like, that water-resistant paper or whatever it is, that tamper, that shows something up when the heat from the fax goes through. That's probably what it is.
I assume, but bottom line is that's not a valid certificate.
Yes.
That's
That would,
what I was wondering.
the insurance would have to be approved by our risk management consultant prior to use of the community center. That's something we do look for that. We do ensure that the insurance is approved prior to the use.
And you have no reason to believe that they won't supply that?
No, I have no.
They're not going to get to use the facility unless they do.
Subject to. Do we have the right to require an employee there, or?
It has to be reasonable. If you think it's a reasonable need, I think what should happen is, it should be reviewed by the clerk's office and how long they're going to be there and.
It's an all-day affair, 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m.
How many teams?
It's an outside
how many
group, it's
people?
not, we don't have our individuals there, so I would think it would be reasonable. We don't usually get many of these type of requests from outside groups.
I just think it's good practice that we start requiring it, if we had the manpower to do it, just to protect.
What I would ask that it be included in the motion that an employee be required to be present and they pay the cost of it.
Sounds reasonable.
So is that your motion?
I'll make a motion to approve with the condition that an employee is stationed there at Wilmington.
And they provide us with a valid
And
insurance
valid
policy.
insurance.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and we have a second on that. So would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggin?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Colombo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Would someone like to make a motion to pay the bills?
Well, can we hit on unfinished business?
Sure.
Maybe before that? And
Sure.
This is kind of a nice segue with the approval of the tar heels. Where have we gotten on the review of all of our fees with various items within the township? Obviously, this.
That information is still being compiled. I have contacted a few of the surrounding municipalities, and I do have some information, but at this time, I do not believe that that the survey is complete, and that's why.
All the other fees, the zoning and planning board fees, that's all together.
Well, that's
Yeah,
going to
well-
be at a hearing for public, a public hearing on the ordinance at the next meeting this month. And then once that's adopted, obviously, they'll go into effect.
The issue is the fees are not contained in one particular fee ordinance with a lot of the municipalities, including our own, such as like the boat ramp fees, and there's fees for games of chance, and things of that nature. Those fees are spread out throughout the code book, so it's a little tricky when you're doing compiling
Some municipalities you can call and say, let me see your fee ordinance. For example, Ocean City has a fee ordinance where everything's in one section. Most municipalities, especially smaller ones, such as our neighbors, have the fees in each part of the ordinance that you're dealing with, and that's probably the logistical problem that they're having.
Once we compile all the information, what would be the difficulty factor in putting together a fee ordinance? So that
It's not that difficult. I'll just spend that kind of time and go through our ordinance and get you a change. Yeah, so it's not, you're talking, once you give me the parameters to do it, we'll get you an ordinance within the next meeting.
What I've seen so far in my little survey that I've been taking is that a lot of our fees are right in line with the other what other municipalities are charging.
So the use of things like fields and, public parks?
Well, a lot of the municipalities do not allow outside, or I've found that several of those do not allow outside organizations to use their facilities. The use is limited to the town's own organizations only. So,
My understanding too is potential issue with Pinelands and the turf farm, where they're renting their fields out, so if they take that away from them, we're probably going to see a lot more requests.
Well, their fees are substantial, from what I understand, compared to ours. So, now it is a private entity, but still, you know, I would really think that if we're having some of these bigger organizations from outside coming in, we certainly want to take advantage and make sure that we cover all of our potential costs. At a minimum, if not anything, we should probably be making at least a profit somehow, you know. So, you know, my guess is as we go forward with this, we're going to be probably coming up with some larger fees for, at least for outside organizations who want to come in and utilize our facilities.
Especially if there aren't other communities who are
Willing to,
available.
sure, right, supply and demand.
You know, I think, you know, bringing them in under a controlled basis, so make sure we cover our costs. You know, it's advantageous to the whole township. You know, bring people in, you know, some of them staying at the Econo Lodge, they're using their restaurants, and, you know, with the economic situation we're all in right now, whatever we can do to bring people here, I think it's beneficial to everyone at this point, so, but we have to do it prudently so we have our costs covered.
Yep. Is there any other unfinished business before?
I have one thing, and it's really just for my own information on how to proceed, is with the lights at Amanda's Field. I would like to get working on them as far as getting them ordered. The money's in the bond. How do I proceed with that part? Do you need something in writing, or?
You need a request.
It's in the bond, I mean, I want to know.
We need a resolution and approval by the township committee.
Authorizing the bid.
So if that's something that you're requesting, that's something that we could put on the agenda for next meeting and have a discussion.
If you could, please.
I would ask that, and this is just to give you an update on the agenda and what's required to be on it. Occasionally something comes up and it's not on the agenda, but generally speaking, if you know you have an issue for the agenda, even though it says unfinished business, we usually list that. So I would ask that if you have agenda items that you might want action on, it should be listed in the agenda. So if you call the clerk's office by Thursday the week before, that way they can get it on the agenda to discuss it.
Yeah, just clarification on my part, so I know which way to proceed.
Okay, so with that, I'll ask someone to make a motion to pay the bills.
I hereby move that all claims submitted for payment at this meeting be approved and then incorporated into the full minutes of this meeting.
Second.
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansara?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
There are a number of reports from the municipal departments: construction code, animal control, tax assessor, tax collector, MUA report, and municipal court. Those reports will all be available upon request tomorrow at the township clerk's office. I'd like to make a motion to accept these reports.
Second.
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansara?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion carried.
So at this time, we've come to the public comment portion of the meeting and asked if anyone would like to address the township committee. Yes.
This, my friends, is an accumulation.
No, hold on, you know the routine, you have to just state your name and
Upper Township, 801 Chestnut Avenue.
thank you.
Down.
Are you picking her up? Should I raise the microphone? Are you good? Okay. I'm sorry, bye. Sit down.
Okay. That's an accumulation of paperwork that I stood in front of this group here and other groups to get foreclosed properties straightened out. When I purchased properties, there were many, in the 1900s, many people moved from Philadelphia, bought teeny tiny little 20-foot lots, thought they could build a little, like a condominium on it. Everything went bust, and over the years, we have all these things on the tax rolls. I can tell you that because I've been through it for 52 years in this township. Recently, I built a house on a property that I bought. Finally got the pieces foreclosed on and everything. That was 10 years ago. And recently, I purchased 3 lots at the front of that property from the township. A couple years ago, I guess. So, anyway, Scott Giorgetti bought the property next to me. And I don't know how many pieces he brought in there, but those lots look like 20-foot lots I would on this paper. So, here's my property here. And here's Giorgetti's property. And that property is like my property is here, where there's little tiny lots there. And when whoever redrew his plan, drew it like that, one of the problems that happened along the way is that it's not measured correctly. Whoever made mistakes, I don't know. But since he's lived there, he never had a plan to build an as-is property. So we've had a big fight about him being over on my property line. A few months ago, well, it wasn't even that long ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, 6:30 in the morning, he brings bulldozers to the house and starts clearing property in his backyard. Now, about a year and a half or 2 years before that, he went to the Township Committee and asked for, there's a road between our property that was vacated. I was in Florida at the time. My husband had an accident on the ship, and we were down there for several months. Well, he had hip surgery and everything, and when we came back here, he was still sick and eventually died shortly after that. So I had to handle all this myself. In the meantime, I'm dealing with Giorgetti now. Apparently in the front of his property, he has 2 pieces there that do not, that are not foreclosed on. Now, how this relates to this is this represents some 50 years of me having to go back and not being able to build and hold on properties and pay taxes on properties that maybe I could have sold or whatever. Couldn't do anything with them because we had to go back, find the owners and foreclose on the properties. I cannot figure out why this township committee allowed Giorgetti to start building on this property without getting these 2 properties foreclosed on, number 1.
Well, first of all, you're stating things that I need to certainly talk to the engineer and...
No, I have. I've been fighting this all summer. From my property being attacked, he tore down stakes, he tore down ribbons and everything on my property. The man is out of it when it comes to me. He has threatened me. I've had the police there. He's come after me. And this is all because of this property nonsense. Now, he had put, and this is what I was leading up to, he came before the Township Committee to ask for the street to be vacated. And having been through it many times, I'm here to tell you that you could never at the same time go through this and present what you want to do with the property. As this is what I'm going to do and have it all be approved at the same time. Swear to God, it never happened in 52 years. So, in this case, he now has all the trees knocked down up to my property line. I went to my daughter's for Easter. I came home to find a 20-foot wide by 10-foot high dirt on my property line blowing into my yard. He comes, he's threatened me. I mean, the man's bizarre. I can't deal with him. If you can't even have the police to...
I think before we go, too much further, because I understand you may have a complaint, and I'm not sure that you do, but you may, because I don't know based on what you're saying. I mean, I certainly, I don't have property lines and boundaries memorized. I don't think anybody on the committee does.
Right.
And so, what I think, if you're asking if there's been some violation,
that would be something that the code enforcement would take care of, and certainly Mr. Dietrich would assist as the engineer.
And they won't do anything.
Well, there could be other sides to this, and I'm not saying you're wrong or you're right or whatever. So, I think before you go any further, kind of, and I can't even see the blueprints from here, so, I would prefer that we handle it in a way that normally is done, and that is that we research it through code enforcement. We'll certainly, ask for the assistance of Mr. Dietrich, who is our engineer, that certainly have more experience and education in that particular thing than I do from boundary settings, or for that matter, the township, well, I shouldn't say that because we have some builders here, but anyway, I don't think that this is the appropriate time to be doing some of this. It sounds like you may have a complaint, and that's something that we certainly will take seriously.
But I have something very serious to bring up. He has apparently gotten approvals through the way he applied for this to put a pole barn on his property, and he says he's going to put it up against my property line with a barn. He's going to paint it black and red and pink and yellow and everything else, so I will never sell my property. Now, how can we stop work there until this is resolved?
If I may, Roberta,
Excuse me?
if you recall, when we spoke to the zoning officer earlier today, there have been no permits. There have been no permits issued for a pole barn, nor have there been any applications made for permits for a pole barn.
He just built a house for the neighbors and said he's putting a pole barn in the middle of the property.
Well, at this point, nothing has been applied for, and so if he's communicating that, maybe that's his intention, but he still has to go through a process to allow that to take place. And, I'm not questioning what you're saying, but it's not like Mr. Roggetti has a house that he wants to have a colored barn either, so, I think from a regional standpoint, we need to follow the process.
How
So-
can you put a commercial property on a residential property?
A pole barn's not necessary.
It's all his trucks, and they've been sitting there all winter long against my property. 3 trucks, 3 bulldozers, and
If I may,
several cars.
a few weeks ago, she called my office and asked this question. And what I directed Roberta to do was put a written complaint in, what she just described, to the zoning officer, ask the zoning officer for a determination. That determination will be a written document going back to you, that if you don't like that determination, if it's not what you were expecting, you can then appeal that and have the whole matter reviewed by the zoning board. But that's the process that the law sets up to do this.
The reason you didn't get the letter yet is because I've been ill over this. I have been.
I understand.
Nervous breakdown.
But, and that's a shame, and maybe you should hire, if you can, hire somebody to do it, but that's the process that has to take place, because there has to be something for the zoning officer to investigate, and if he hasn't come in for a permit yet, unless they get a complaint to investigate, you're alleging commercial use of residential property, they'd have to investigate that and make a determination. The bottom of that determination will say you have a right to appeal it if you don't agree. If you agree, obviously, you won't appeal it, and your appeal will then go to the zoning board. There's a system set up to do that.
So I go to the township committee first.
No. You would go to the zoning
You go to
officer.
the zoning
You would
officer
written
and
complaint
file
to the
a
zoning
complaint.
officer of just what you said. He's commercially using his property, and I don't believe he has the approvals. The zoning officer would then investigate it, and make a determination. And you would ask her for a formal determination. So if you don't like that determination, you have the right to appeal it.
And you can do that in writing too, Richard.
I'm sorry,
So
sir.
Roberta can do that in writing to Shelley.
Yes, that's what I'm asking you to do. Do it in writing so that you have a record of it.
Well, I started to write it 4 times, but I've been so nervous and upset about it, I just couldn't get it down.
I understand.
Just to let Township Committee know, Mr. Giorgetti, over the years, has made, had applications where he has purchased township property, and he has been subject, there has been a street vacation between Mr. Giorgetti's property and Mrs. Townsend's property, and both of those have been memorialized on a survey where he's made the proper deeds of consolidation to consolidate the properties in accordance with the appropriate land sales. At the completion of his construction of his house, he did have a as-built survey prepared of his home showing the proper setbacks in accordance with his zoning permit. I do agree with Roberta, however, and I've spoken to Mr. Giorgetti, that there is a potential property line dispute between Mr. Giorgetti and Mrs. Townsend in where the surveyors do not necessarily agree on the exact location of the property line. However, that resolution of where that property line has to be done between those respective surveyors has, you know,
It's
the
a
township
private
can't
property
settle.
line dispute between neighbors. The township can't resolve it. Municipal tax maps are notorious for not being exactly accurate because they're not surveys. They're the best evidence that the assessor and the engineer has of where the property lines are. And they're notorious for being wrong.
So, I think it is our responsibility to help you try and at least, you know, guide you where you need to go with this process.
As far as the property line dispute, you need to go to a surveyor, and you need your surveyor to talk to his surveyor.
I already did it. I paid $1,500 for a new survey.
That's a resolution that unless you agree, one or both of you will end up in court saying, this is my line.
And myself and Shelley did discuss that with Mrs. Townsend and Mr. Giorgetti both. And she was, Mrs. Townsend had discussed, there's two properties that are further back that were not subject to the land sale. He had requested to purchase them from the township, however, we could not sell them because there are the two outstanding properties where we're still in the process, or in one of the foreclosure groups that the township is in the process of foreclosing, and we could not offer them to sell to the Mr. Giorgetti because we didn't have their title.
But, so, the property that was built was still in conformance with our existing rules, right?
Yes, yes.
That would only add to his property.
Correct.
Amount of density or whatever, but not in any way was needed to build what was built.
In conformance with his survey,
And that's all the township can go by. A surveyor comes in and says, this is where the lines are. That's what you give your permit on.
Well, here's where I'm at. I'm willing to settle anything. I'm not a difficult person to deal with. But I want some cooperation, not this nastiness around here and getting me upset so that I'm having a heart attack or something that day. I'm 77 years old. I don't need this. So I'd like to get it settled, but I'd like it to be settled in an amicable way. And as I say, I'm open to options. But the thing is, I'm not doing a thing until this is straightened out with what's going on that lot.
Again, you have to file, if you think it's being used for commercial purposes, give those facts and that complaint in writing to the zoning office. The zoning office will investigate it and give you a determination.
What office is that?
It's Shelley, the zoning
The
office.
zoning office.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, hearing a lot of silence, I think we'll close the public portion, entertain a motion to go in, and I'll call on Mr. Coggins, but before I do that, I want to thank all of you for attending this evening, so go ahead.
I hereby move that a resolution be incorporated into the minutes authorizing the Township Committee to enter into an executive session for the following matters pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act. The matters are as follows: one for personnel, three for contract negotiation, one for litigation. I also included in my motion the estimated time and circumstances under which the discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public as follows. A, it is anticipated that the matters discussed in closed session may be disclosed to the public upon the determination of the Township Committee that the public interest will no longer be served by such confidentiality. With respect to employment and personnel matters, such discussions will be made public if and when formal action is taken, or when individuals involved consent that it may be made public. With respect to contract negotiations, such matters will be made public when negotiations have ceased and there is no longer a reason for confidentiality. With respect to litigation matters, such discussions will be made public when litigation is complete and the applicable appeal period is expired.
Second. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Ansari?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Colombo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Thank you all again for attending. We appreciate your attendance. Have a great week.